The silhouette is unmistakable. The confident swagger, the perfectly tailored suit, and the watch on his wrist. For over 30 years, that watch was a Rolex. It was as much a part of James Bond's identity as his license to kill or his Walther PPK. Fused together in the public imagination, Bond and Rolex became a symbol of timeless, rugged elegance. So how did one of the most powerful brand partnerships in cinema history simply vanish? How was this iconic relationship stolen in plain sight? This wasn't a business deal. It was a heist, a masterclass in marketing warfare, orchestrated by a visionary who saw a moment of weakness and changed cinematic history with a single audacious move. To understand the scale of this theft, you have to go back to the source. The character of James Bond was born from the mind of a former naval intelligence officer, Ian Fleming. And Fleming didn't just write about a spy, he wrote about his world. A world of real-world brands, grit, and taste. When it came to his hero's watch, he was specific. In his novel On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Bond wears a heavy Rolex Oyster Perpetual, and this authenticity bled onto the silver screen. When Sean Connery first embodied the character in 1962's Dr. No, the watch on his wrist wasn't provided by a marketing department. It was his own personal Rolex Submariner. That single detail defined Bond's ethos for a generation, which is to tell the world that this wasn't a piece of flashy tech. It was a tool. A durable, dependable military-grade instrument worn by a man of action who also happened to appreciate the finer things. In the culture of the time, the Rolex Submariner became a piece of shorthand. It signaled a new kind of rugged masculinity, a man comfortable in a tuxedo or a wetsuit. It was an aspirational symbol for an entire generation, cementing the idea that a Rolex was not just a watch, but a statement. And for decades, the association deepened, becoming an undisputed fact in pop culture. But by the late 1980s, the world had changed. The Cold War was thawing, and James Bond, a hero of that conflict, felt like a relic. The cinematic landscape was now dominated by a new kind of hero. The muscle-bound, unstoppable forces of nature like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Their enemies were cartoonish, their action was explosive, and their style was non-existent. Bond, with his tailored suits and subtle wit, seemed dangerously close to becoming irrelevant. After 1989, the franchise fell into a 6-year hiatus, tangled in legal disputes. In this moment of uncertainty, the Titan grew complacent. Rolex, a brand built on an almost arrogant level of prestige, does not pay for endorsements. They didn't need to. They took the Bond connection for granted, assuming 007 would always be theirs. It was a fatal miscalculation. As the franchise geared up for a reboot, a challenger saw the opening. Enter Jean-Claude Biver. This was the man who had almost single-handedly saved the mechanical watch industry from the quartz crisis by resurrecting the defunct Blancpain brand with the slogan, "Since 1735, there has never been a quartz Blancpain watch. And there never will be." He was a force of nature, a marketing genius who understood that a great story was more valuable than gold. Now at Omega, he saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he found the perfect ally in Lindy Hemming, the Oscar-winning costume designer hired to reinvent Bond's style. Biver had the vision, Hemming had the creative authority, and the slumbering giant of Rolex provided the perfect target. So how did Biver pull off the impossible? He understood Omega's position. They were a giant but a sleeping one, respected for their history with NASA and the Olympics, but lacking the cultural cachet of Rolex. A simple endorsement deal wouldn't be enough. He had to change the entire conversation. He decided to fight Rolex not on price, but on story. The pitch was a masterstroke. It was a direct challenge to Rolex's narrative of luxury with a more powerful idea: authenticity. They armed themselves with a crucial truth. The real-life British Ministry of Defense had a long-standing relationship with Omega. While Rolex was the watch of Ian Fleming, Omega was the watch of the Royal Navy. Their argument was irrefutable. A commander in the Royal Navy, a former Special Boat Service operative like James Bond, wouldn't necessarily wear a luxury civilian watch on a mission. He would be issued one. And for decades, the watch issued by the MOD to its elite divers was the Omega Seamaster. This historical authenticity was the weapon Omega used to break Rolex's hold, and the argument was cinched by Lindy Hemming. She famously recalled that her father had been in the Royal Air Force, and that all his colleagues who were naval men wore Omegas. For her, Bond was a naval man and a man of the world, and Omega was simply the more authentic, more modern choice. The decision was made. The new watch would be the Omega Seamaster Professional 300M. It was modern, purpose-built, and a world away from the classic Submariner. But Omega didn't stop there. They sealed the deal with a multi-million-dollar multi-film partnership. They didn't just rent a space on Bond's wrist. They invested in becoming a permanent part of his DNA. The impact was immediate. With the release of GoldenEye in 1995, audiences met a new James Bond, and on his wrist, a new watch. And they didn't just make it a product placement. Instead, they integrated it as a gadget, seamlessly woven into the plot. In the film, it featured a laser and a remote detonator, transforming it from wristwear into a vital weapon. A role Rolex, with its strict tool-not-toy philosophy, would never have allowed. This clever integration continued through the Brosnan era and solidified with Daniel Craig's grittier Bond. The Omega became a rugged companion, evolving alongside the character. The business effect was seismic. The Omega Seamaster Professional 300M became an icon in its own right, a must-have watch for a new generation. Sales exploded. The brand, once seen by some as a father's watch, was now a symbol of modern adventure and cinematic cool. Omega capitalized on this, launching an array of highly collectible limited edition 007 watches and flooding the market with co-branded commercials. The message was clear: they do not intend to make this a temporary endorsement, but a partnership that will redefine a legacy. For an entire generation of filmgoers, Omega is the Bond watch. The public perception had been successfully and completely rewritten. The heist was not just successful, it established a new dynasty. In the end, Omega's victory wasn't just about a bigger budget or a better product. It was a masterclass in narrative warfare. They understood that in the modern age, storytelling is the most powerful weapon in marketing. Rolex had a history with James Bond, but Omega offered the franchise a more compelling story for its future. A story of real-world military authenticity perfectly suited for a rebooted hero. Rolex will forever be the watch of Ian Fleming's original creation, a titan of the industry with an untouchable legacy. But Omega's move was a lesson in strategy, vision, and the audacity to challenge an icon. They didn't just put their watch on a movie star's wrist. They bought a piece of the narrative, and in doing so, became part of the legend itself. Because in the world of high-stakes branding, the strongest player doesn't just tell the time, it tells the better story. And in 1995, Omega told a story that even Rolex couldn't beat.